Hi, and welcome to Classical Coffee for October. In preparation for our concert this Saturday and Sunday, the 27th and 28th, at Wickenden Chapel on the campus of Tabor Academy in Marion. We call this concert a concert of concertos. It's kind of different for us to do all concertos on a program. And it winds up being sort of the history of the concerto in an hour and a half. We start with a work by Arcangelo Corelli from the late 17th century and finish with a work by Igor Stravinsky, the 20th century. The words concert and concerto we're kind of familiar with, but we oftentimes don't realize maybe that they come from the same root. And that root is an Italian verb, concertare, which means to bring together, to assemble. And the roots of the concerto go all the way back to the late 1600s with the Gabrieli family in Venice, where they would create works opposing two groups of instruments or singers to create an antiphonal effect. And that idea, what was called the concertato principle, went all the way through the early Baroque up until a composer, an Italian composer, Arcangelo Corelli, in the 1680s began to write what were called concerto grossos, large groupings of instruments, which would feature that principle of a small group of instruments, the concertino, the little grouping, against the concerto grosso, which is the large grouping. And one of the pieces that we're playing on the program, Corelli's Opus 6, number 4, Concerto Grosso in D major, is really one of the first examples of the concerto in the literature. Now, there are two basic principles. One I've already mentioned that create a concerto. One is that principle of contrasting groups or contrasting ideas. The second is the use of a figured bass, a steady bass, a continuo bass underneath a florid treble line. And many composers use these principles to create many diverse works. Of course, Corelli, another Italian, Giuseppe Torelli, was very important. Antonio Vivaldi, who wrote more than 400 examples of concertos, both concerti grossi and solo concertis. And it really was the three-movement form that Vivaldi created that became the predecessor of what we know as the modern concerto. But certainly it was Johann Sebastian Bach's Brandenburg concertos, I think, that are the pinnacle of the form. And we're going to talk tomorrow about Brandenburg number 5, which is an example of the concerto grosso from Bach. Today, though, we want to focus on Corelli's work and the concept of the continuo and what it means. And so I'm going to invite our harpsichord soloist and continuo player for this concert, Paul CIENNIWA, to join me. Hi, Paul. How are you? Good. We're in Paul's house, by the way. Lovely place, good space, a musician's house, definitely. And we're going to talk about the continuo principle. Now, Paul, I mentioned that that the continuo concept is fundamental to the concerto, indeed all Baroque music. But can you tell us what a continuo part is, or the continuo section?
Well, it is a section. It's not really a part per se, or even an instrument. The continuo is, the best analogy is to compare it to a jazz ensemble or a rock group, and the rhythm section in those groups. In jazz and rock, you have drums, you have rhythm guitar, and a bass guitar, which all provide rhythm, harmonic foundation, and just the chords for the song. And in rock music, you then have a lead guitar and whatever singer and other instruments might be there. But the rhythm section is the harmonic and rhythmic core of the ensemble. The continuo group is the same thing. And as you said, the continuo exists really in all Baroque music, with very few exceptions. And in the case of a Baroque orchestra, the continuo really provides the harmonic foundation, and the rhythmic impulse. That continuo group, though, isn't specified who plays that. Usually, we interpret the continuo to be a keyboard instrument which provides chords, so that could be harpsichord or organ, and then a bassline instrument like bassoon or cello or cello and double bass. You can even have that chordal instrument be, other than a keyboard, could be guitar or lute.
Or lute, correct.
And all of those could be together, or you could reduce it
so
to
it could
just
be a large
couple of
group or a
parts.
small group, depending. So in the role of the harpsichord, what specifically are you doing when you play a continuo part in the orchestra?
Again, we have an analogy to rock and jazz. In a jazz or rock chart, that is the score, you have the melody and then a series of chords, and that's how rock musicians interpret what to play in the music. Mm-hmm. It's sort of the opposite in Baroque music, where you have a bass line and then indications for the chords. So not the melody, but the bass line. On your screen, you can see what is known as a figured bass part, and here you have a bass line with numbers, and the numbers tell me more or less the chords that I'm supposed to play. So this example, and so on. I followed the numbers, which give me a sense of what chords I'm supposed to play, but I can voice them differently and play them actually in any manner I wish.
So then the numbers are a shorthand and you're free to interpret them, so you don't play it the same way every time.
That's right. It's really an improvised part, just mm-hmm. like in jazz and rock. I use the numbers as a guideline, but then I also use good taste to guide me as well. Also the acoustics, the size of the orchestra, even the intonation. So, you know, if I hear something's a little out of tune, I won't play that note in my chord because I'll let the others work on the intonation. So there are just different ways in which I'll voice and bring in different notes and so on to enhance the entire orchestral sound, while also rhythmically keeping the whole ensemble together.
Well, we'll get a chance to see just how that works in action as Paul plays a continuo part in Corelli's Concerto Grosso Opus 6, number 4 in D major, this Saturday and Sunday, the 27th and 28th at Tabor Academy, the Wickenden Chapel. Tomorrow we'll invite Jesse Holstein to join us, and we'll talk a bit about Brandenburg Concerto number 5.